The writings of the Baha'i Faith say that all art is a gift of the Holy Spirit. So, how are Baha'i artists using their painting, music, drama, and sculpture to convey the teachings of Baha'u'llah about the oneness of mankind and the oneness of God? Elevation of the Arts is our topic today on the Light of Unity. Welcome to the Light of Unity. I'm Nwandi Lawson. If you're anything like me, perhaps you've listened to popular music or watched the latest fad on television or at the movies, or maybe even read a popular novel or two and wondered to yourself, how can this be contributing to any betterment of the world? Well, considering that the Baha'i teachings teach that all art is a gift of the Holy Spirit, I was anxious to find out how Baha'i artists might be conveying this theme in their works. I started at the studio of painter LOU102411. She uses spirituality and psychology to overcome racism and prejudice.
As far as I can remember, I've always done art. I've watched other people do art as a child. I would do caricatures or comics. And as I grew older, I taught myself how to do art. And in some ways, a lot of people encouraged me to do that because it seemed so easy. And so after school, I learned techniques. I learned how to see certain things. But then I didn't do it for a long time. And when I became a Baha'i, I felt like I really, because art was such a passion for me, that I needed to do something about it.
LOU102411 says it was the teachings about the oneness of mankind that first attracted her to the Baha'i faith. Being a Filipino American in Alabama in the 1970s was very challenging, she says, because she was constantly called to align herself with either blacks or whites. Today, her paintings illuminate the way she has come to see color.
When I do my paintings, I often, especially when I do portraits, I separate my colors. And from that, with the separate strokes, they come together as you pull back. And to me, that represents so much of the principle in the Baha'i faith about the unity and diversity. You know, each color is separate and vibrant on its own, but together it creates this wonderful picture and it excites the eyes. So it isn't just about all being the same or all being smoothed out. Each holds its own, each color holds its own. O Son of Spirit, my claim on thee is great. It cannot be forgotten. Every time I begin to have a creative endeavor, I start out with a prayer. My grace to thee is plenteous. It cannot be veiled. My love has made in thee its home. It cannot be concealed. My light is manifest to thee. It cannot be obscured. I pray to get out of the way. And I have enough trust that I've studied how to use color and brushes. So that part, I have the confidence in that. Yet I still have to get out of the way to allow those insights to come forward that only prayer can do that.
For 19 days during the month of March each year, Baha'is fast from sunup to sundown in the hopes of increasing their nearness to God. During one fast, Lisa expanded her artistic endeavors to include a more direct presentation of the Baha'i teachings on postcards and yard signs.
I chose writings that I would want to share with everyone, that I would want somebody to look at and connect immediately, you know, and read it and want to read it and want to put it up somewhere where they can see it and read it. And it didn't need to be complicated, it needed to be very simple. So I've chosen certain themes like equality of men and women, friendship based on the love of God is everlasting. You know, those particular themes that I would want to represent the faith. And it was very exciting for me to be able to do that in a way that I know was going to be something that I can share with more people. And I've also thought of other ways that I could use the writings that would be a way to teach, and even with garden blessings, that I've chosen certain writings to be printed that you can put in your garden, and what I found is neighbors would come over and want to read them, and even pizza delivery guys would come up and read and say, "This is really nice," you know. And so to me, it's gratifying that it reaches so many people and across religions and across cultures.
The writings of the Baha'i Faith say, all art is a gift of the Holy Spirit. When this light shines through the mind of a musician, it manifests itself in beautiful harmonies. Again, shining through the mind of a poet, it is seen as fine poetry and poetic prose. When the light of the Sun of Truth inspires the mind of a painter, he produces marvelous pictures. These gifts are fulfilling their highest purpose when showing forth the praise of God. This is the meaning behind the art that Lisa Pouzon seeks to create.
It's powerful when you infuse it with spirit. That's when you know that there's something special there, and when it speaks to other people. You know, I know a difference. I know when I go and look at something and it's nice and everything, and there's something that I can get from it, but then there could be another piece that totally just evokes these feelings from me, and you know, and I don't even know who the painter is or what that's about, but yet that's a connection that you make at that other level, especially the issue of oneness in our faith. To me, I used to think that it was so much more about race, and it is. You know, we talk about race unity, but now I'm moving towards what it is, what oneness really is, a spiritual oneness. And I want to know from the cellular level onto the universe, you know, how are we one? How are we connected? How is it that people from different cultures can relate to a piece of artwork? You know, what is that? It's not language. It's not something that you're talking about. It's not a belief. So art is so powerful. And if you endow that with spirit, then it is extremely powerful in the sense that it could be transforming. And so that's the kind of stuff I want to be able to express in my art.
For more than 40 years, the Yellow Daisy Festival at Stone Mountain Park has attracted art enthusiasts from throughout the Southeast. This year's featured artist, Charity Hofert, says the Baha'i Faith has inspired her to draw on art influences from around the world. Let's go inside and see some of her work.
I would say that my faith inspires everything that I do. And the challenge for me has been, and not a challenge like a problem, but the thing to really try to keep in the forefront of my mind and my heart is doing this dance where I'm always asking myself, how is what I'm doing in line with what I believe, and how is it not only in line with it but demonstrative of it, and how can I share what it is that I believe through these works. And so you know, so much of what inspires me about art in general, or the art that I'm really attracted to, is often an example of the things, the connections that run through art around the world, the similarities, these common threads that you see emerging, you know, whether it's you know, a tapa cloth from the South Pacific, or some type of you know, a tapestry, or a painting from, you know, all throughout the continent of Africa, you know, something beadwork from New Guinea, or you know, painted pottery in Peru, that you know, when you look at all of these pieces, there's so much similarity in the colors, the designs, these different symbols that emerge, you know, and really, just as music in many ways is really a universal language, so is art. And I love to be just even a little part of, you know, kind of, I love creating work that draws some of those elements together. One thing that I love to share at some of these kinds of art shows are I do these little magnets and plaques that have quotes from teachings from Buddhism or Hinduism or Islam or the Baha'i faith, or you know, different thinkers and teachers, passages from Native American wisdom, or you know, all kinds of different things. And so I love having these sort of sprinkled around among all of the work that I have displayed, because I know that a lot of people don't necessarily have access or don't expose themselves to the words of different faiths, or if they do, it provides another opportunity for people maybe to be touched by and to see themselves some of these common threads, you know, that run spiritually through the different traditions of the world. I do actually a line of pottery that I call Global Impressions, and it's a little play on words because they are these pieces that are sort of quilted together with different sections that have different textures that are drawn from or inspired by, and sometimes directly taken from different cultural patterns around the world. So the pieces become like this, like basically like a porcelain quilt of, you know, one part of it might be a carving from India, and another part is, you know, made from a mold that I made like of cowrie shells, and then another part is a mat from Samoa. And so these different elements coming together actually to make one piece. So that impression of the textures all over, and just different color glazes, and so that, you know, regardless of what the medium is, that ends up sort of being the common thing that's pulling them all together, is this love of texture and color and this layering and contrast of different things to make one piece.
The Baha'i faith and art, two constants in Charity's life.
Well, my parents are both very artistic. My mom used to paint a lot, and she did some watercolors, and she's a really good drawer. She's very good at drawing. She won't tell you that she is, but she is. And my dad is a woodworker, and I actually, before I graduated from high school, I used to work with him in his workshop, and so I used to sand the canes and my knuckles, and so I worked with him in his workshop for a long time. And then I studied art in college as well. That was my major, so I wasn't sure exactly what it would look like when I was finished, but I knew that's what I was interested in then. So after college, I sort of stumbled around doing a bunch of different things. I painted murals for a while. I worked with a stonemason for a while. I, you know, building rock walls and stuff. I worked at a pottery studio in Nashville for a couple of years. And so there's always been some kind of artful thing that's a thread running through, but it's really been within the last few years, last 10 to 15 years that I've been doing it sort of as a business.
Charity was the featured artist at this year's Yellow Daisy Festival, with its bright yellow emblem at the center of the 9-pointed star, a symbol for Baha'is of the unity of the world's religious traditions. In a style that has come to characterize the Charity Elise art line, the design was painstakingly created, one drop of paint at a time.
The artwork that inspires that sort of line of work that I do is the art from Australia, the Aboriginal art from Australia. And so I don't use any of the symbols or do the same, you know, type of stories that the people do there, but I love the texture and the rhythm that's created by the placement of those different colors of dots. And so I've had a lot of fun playing with creating designs and pictures with that. I love the kind of rhythm that sort of evolves as you continue to put these dots onto the canvas. And so I was working with the people here at the festival and really wanted to come up with a design that was, you know, that embodied the spirit of the festival itself, but then also was, you know, that's a style that I really love to work in.
It was a love that was kindled by an art teacher at Maxwell International Baha'i School in British Columbia.
One of the first projects that I did, she called it cultural rhythms, and you had to choose a specific country or specific culture within a country, study their art, write a long research paper that was based on that art, where it came from, its evolution, the people who make it, and then to create an artwork yourself that was based, you know, loosely or directly on that type of art. And I chose the Aboriginal artwork at that time mostly because it really did not speak to me. I wasn't really fond of it. The pieces that I had seen And so I thought, well, you know, it would be interesting to look a little bit more into this and sort of see. And so I fell in love with it, and really I've been making dots since then. That was around 91, so that was.
That's a lot of dots.
Yeah, that's a lot of dots. I wish I had a counter that I had going all this time.
When I decided to profile artist Masoud Olafani, I wasn't sure whether he'd be on stage in his signature role of Malcolm X in the play The Meeting, or singing with area musicians. I must admit I was surprised when he invited me to a studio at the backside of the Woodruff Arts Center. That's where he's completing his master's thesis in sculpture at the Savannah College of Art and Design. Masoud says he doesn't remember a time when he was not an artist.
My father says that I always used to act like a fool when I was a kid. He said, "Boy, you sure are silly." So I was always expressive as a child. And like a lot of kids, growing up in the 70s, I was into Michael Jackson, Jackson 5, and I remember putting on concerts for my parents when I was very small, and then also drawing. I started drawing when I was 4. So I've always been around the arts, interested in the arts. Fortunately, I had a mom who was very creative, both in how she put together the interior spaces of our living quarters. Even if it was an apartment or a home, it didn't matter. It always was very creative. So I grew up in that kind of environment. So my artistic kind of sensibilities were inspired by her, through that encouraging environment, by her encouraging some things that she saw in me. And then also exposed me to galleries and museums, taking me to see shows on Broadway, I mean, all that stuff. So it was a natural inclination, and then it was nurtured by my mother's interest and encouragement.
And so when he went to college, it was only natural that Masoud continued his art studies.
I decided to do what felt right to me, which was the arts. But I mean, I had run the gamut. A lawyer, a doctor, until I cut my hand open one day on a bandsaw and saw the blood, and I fainted when I went to the hospital, so I realized that probably is not the life for me. So I just naturally had this inclination towards the arts, towards creativity, and I was encouraged by professors who saw my work, and so when I was at Morehouse, I just continued my artistic education.
It was also at Morehouse College that he discovered the Baha'i faith.
I had done this like varied religious experience. I had read the Tao Te Ching, the Hindu holy texts. I was reading the Quran, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita. So I was already open to truth, no matter where I felt it was coming from. So I could recognize the essence of truth through a variety of different sources. So it was the writings that really attracted me, and I was like, wow, because I was, I'd never heard of Baha'u'llah. So like, who Baha, I couldn't even really pronounce it. And so it was through the writings that I really became attracted. I was like, wow, I can't find any fault here. This is really speaking to my heart. So whatever that source, that those other writings that I found that was true in the Bible, in the Quran, in the Hindu holy text, that same source was present and evident in these writings as well. I'm not an artist who who will take my faith and literally translate it into work. What works best for me is to allow those teachings to permeate my heart, and then allow myself to kind of go off in my creative directions. And then whatever comes as a result of that investigation, as long as it's in line with the teachings of the faith, the core teachings of spiritual principles, it's an expression of God. So for me, it's more about this kind of like structure of being, this kind of way of being. And that provides the foundational context in which, and the parameters in which I can move as an artist. And I have the whole world, the whole universe to pull from for inspiration. But those teachings provide that kind of moral foundational element that helps to guide the investigation. A lot of my work deals with complex family structures. I kind of pull from my own experience in my family. The good and the bad, or the good and the challenging, I should say. Because all of it in the end makes you a better person, hopefully, if you can see it in its proper context. So, this piece here, for example, is something that I did. It's called to gut, and just simply the action of gutting something. Well, what's being gutted? A house, which is the seat, the structure of the family, the symbolic structure of the family. And there's all these eyes around this wooden structure that have been silk screened onto the body of the house itself, and the eyes are of children. So it's children bearing witness to a particular experience. I'm a child of divorce, as many people are. And I just kind of wanted to get to some kind of like place where I could talk about that kind of visceral experience, the act of gutting something, which in this sense is symbolic, but it points very clearly to the act of gutting a family. And the saw is a two-person saw. So you have to get a person on each side to saw. So it's not one person doing the gutting, it's actually two people doing the gutting. And the child of the bystanders, the witnesses who are observing the process of gutting the house. I figured a young lady like that, with such a good sense of humor, might be a pretty good wife.
But not all of Masood's work deals with family breakups.
I wanted to tell a simple story about my great-grandfather, my great-grandmother, and about who they were as people. And to talk, I do a lot of writing in my work, so the text that's on here, that's been silk-screened on here, is actually my imagination of how they would have spoken, how he would have spoken about my grandmother, how my great-grandmother would have spoken about him, and using, based on interviews that I had with different family members. So all of the work that I do is kind of like this kind of fusion of these different experiences, trying to find a way to distill those experiences into visual form and to create something interesting that people want to spend time with, contemplate, and figure out a meaning for themselves, perhaps an overall meaning, but also a specific meaning for themselves. So what I want to do in anything that I create is create a space for the viewer to participate in the process of decoding the image. I don't want to just be didactic and tell you this is exactly what it is, it's a nice package, unwrap it, this is exactly what you got. I really want you to come to the work and have a dialogue with the work. I have an idea in my mind of what it's about, but I'm really also interested in what you bring to the work and what, through the dialogue you have with that object, what it unfolds to you.
And while he has no expectations that his artwork will be seen the same way by all people, Masood says there is a spirit that links the world's artists.
The concept of unity in the Baha'i faith, this notion of unity and diversity, it's not unity and sameness. And, so what essentially that means is we want artists from all over the world. You might be an artist from Atlanta, Georgia. You might be an artist from Bangladesh. You might be an artist from South Africa. You might be an artist from Italy. They all have a unique cultural expression to contribute. And all of it's part of the global family. So the unity is in the diversity of that expression. And what a boring place if it was all the same, you know. So that to me is perhaps the most exciting thing about how the arts are used in the expression of the Baha'i faith, how it becomes a catalyst for a deeper awareness of human beings, to understand each other, to unlock our own individual stories, and therefore to add to the tapestry of our collective story as a human family, which is individual and global. And that's exciting stuff. That's exciting. So you have to decide what's most important for you first. We worship a number of different things. Some people worship God, some people worship money, some people worship image, status, clothes, those types of things. You have to be clear about what's the most important thing in your life. And if you're being true to that, then you allow the journey to unfold naturally. And there's a freedom in that. Because it's almost like, all right, I'm making a conscious decision to be this, to embody this. I'm making a conscious decision to be an artist, or I'm making a conscious decision to be a banker or whatever it is. And I'm going to allow the journey to unfold naturally. For me, it's like, my first focus is on God, is on my spiritual connection, my spiritual development, protecting that, nurturing that, watching that expand and grow. The art is an expression of my soul. So I accept the journey as a true expression of my soul, no matter what that journey unfolds, no matter what it looks like. If I become a multi-millionaire, fine. That's, there's plenty of ways I could use that money. But if I don't, that's okay, as long as I'm being true to that core value, that core belief. And that's the connection to the divine, which for me is the most important connection that any human being has on this plane of existence and beyond.
Today is the anniversary of 9/11. And in this day of remembrance, when we think of this awful tragedy in American soil, we know that there is a light in the darkness. That Baha'u'llah has brought this healing message to the world. And despite all the calamities and tragedies that we face, we can know that we are promised a peace. Cause me to
The art of music comes to life Sunday mornings at the Baha'i Unity Center, where the writings of the Baha'i faith are vivified through the sounds of reggae, hip-hop, blues, and gospel. What refuge is there beside thee, O my Lord, to which I can flee? And where is there a haven to which I can hasten? Nay, the power of thy might beareth me witness. No protector is there but thee, no place to flee except thee, no refuge save thee. Cause me to taste, O my Lord, the divine sweetness of thy remembrance and praise. A prayer for nearness to God, revealed by Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, coming alive in a gospel rendition performed by the New World Unity Ensemble. Whether formally enrolled in the Baha'i community or not, these volunteer musicians are united in the joy they derive by lifting up the Word of God in song. A prayer revealed early in the history of the Baha'i faith asks, "Is there any remover of difficulties save God?" Say, "Praised be God. He is God. All are His servants and all abide by His bidding." A powerful prayer set to music. Art that's beautiful to see and to hear and uplifting to the soul. If you'd like to learn more about the Baha'i faith, you can call 1-800-22-UNITE or go online to www.baha'i.us. I would like to leave you now with one of the primary teachings of the Baha'i faith. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth. I'm Wandy Lawson. See you next time for Light of Unity.